Conférence de presse de la vice-première ministre et ministre des Finances Chrystia Freeland et du ministre de l'Approvisionnement et des Services publics Jean-Yves Duclos.
Et lieutenant du Québec. Et lieutenant du Québec.
Oui, lieutenant du Québec, bien sûr, M. Duclos. Alors, je vous laisse tout de suite la parole pour qu'on ait un maximum de temps pour les questions.
OK. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Ça me fait plaisir d'être avec vous aujourd'hui. Je commencerai en discutant l'économie canadienne. Je ferai ensuite une mise à jour sur les relations canado-américaines, puis sur le congé de taxes et sur les nouvelles mesures que nous prenons quant aux locations à court terme. Après ça, le ministre Duclos discutera de pourquoi les nouvelles mesures concernant la location court terme sont positives pour le Québec. Et va nous donner une mise à jour sur le congé du taxe au Québec. Commençons avec l'économie. En octobre, l'inflation était à 2%. Ça veut dire que l'inflation est située dans la fourchette cible du Banque du Canada depuis 10 mois. Ça veut dire toute l'année. Et on constate que les taux d'intérêt diminuent déjà 4 fois. Et le Canada était le premier pays du G7 à avoir réduit ses taux d'intérêt. Just a quick Canada-U.S. update. Yesterday, the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee met for the 5th time. We focused, as we have from the outset, on the border and on Canada-U.S. trade. We also had a good discussion about the Arctic. Our government absolutely believes that it is essential for Canada to take a Team Canada approach. It is with this in mind that last week the Prime Minister, together with me and Minister LeBlanc, met with the premiers of provinces and territories to discuss what we are doing as a country and how we're working together. It's also with this in mind that earlier today, the Prime Minister, again together with me and Minister LeBlanc, met with the leaders of the opposition parties. We, ministers across government, are continuing to meet with business and labor leaders. We know that this is a challenging time for Canada. We also recognize that there are real opportunities for us. Canada now needs to be strong, smart, and united, and that is the way that together we achieve a good outcome for our country. One of the things that we spoke about with premiers and also with opposition leaders is that it is of paramount importance for all leaders across Canada to be taking a Team Canada approach. It is really important for us to be strong, smart, and united, and it's really important for us to take care not to negotiate against ourselves. And I'm confident we can do that. I'm also happy to highlight the fact that Bill C-78, the Tax Break for All Canadians Act, was adopted by the House of Commons last Thursday. It's now before the Senate. That's the last step before royal assent. This is a tax break on essentials like groceries, prepared foods, kids' clothing. It's going to help middle-class Canadians buy the things they need and save a little for the things they want. And it will run from December 14th to February 15th. And then finally, we are here to announce the Short-Term Rental Enforcement Fund. We are today launching the new $50 million Short-Term Rental Enforcement Fund. This is giving cities the tools they need to crack down on short-term rentals, things like hiring enforcement staff, managing complaints, conducting inspections. When we spoke when we first started doing this work on short-term rentals, hearing from Canadians how they were making less housing available in cities across the country, one of the things we heard from municipalities was they supported the idea, but they needed the tools to act. This fund is about listening to them, being responsive to the needs of Canadian cities, and giving them the tools that they need. Et maintenant, je passe la parole au ministre Duclos.
Bonjour tout le monde et merci beaucoup, Chrystia. Permettez-moi de revenir sur une annonce que j'ai eu la chance de faire vendredi dernier aux États généraux sur l'itinérance à Québec avec la ministre France-Hélène Duranceau, où nous avons conjointement annoncé la construction de 500 nouvelles unités de logement pour les personnes en situation ou à risque d'itinérance. Ces 500 logements seront construits par 22 projets différents, pilotés par des organismes partenaires qui sont essentiels dans la réalisation de tels projets. Ces 500 unités ont pu être financées grâce à l'entente historique de 1,8 milliard de dollars que nous avons signée avec le gouvernement du Québec il y a à peu près un an. C'est une entente que Pierre Poilievre a déjà promis de déchirer et qui, selon lui, ne construit aucun logement, alors que cette entente est en train de mener à la construction de 8 000 logements sociaux, dont plusieurs centaines dans des circonscriptions conservatrices. Ces 500 nouveaux logements sont une bonne nouvelle pour les personnes vulnérables et pour les locataires à faible revenu en particulier. Et aujourd'hui, le Fonds d'appui à l'application des règles sur la location à court terme annoncé par la vice-première ministre Freeland est une autre bonne nouvelle pour les locataires de la classe moyenne. En agissant contre les abus de location court terme de type Airbnb, nous retirons des logements des mains de ceux qui utilisent ou utiliseraient ces logements comme investissement et les remettons à la disposition des gens qui se cherchent un endroit pour vivre dignement. La semaine dernière, nous avons voté pour la loi C-78 sur l'abordabilité. Cela signifie que dès le 14 décembre prochain, les Québécois et les autres Canadiens pourront profiter d'un congé de taxe sur une multitude de produits de première nécessité et d'autres produits qui les aideront à profiter du temps des fêtes. Cela permettra aussi d'aider les PME qui voient souvent leur chiffre d'affaires diminuer de manière importante en janvier et en février. Même si les choses vont mieux et iront de mieux en mieux dans les prochains mois, les familles québécoises et canadiennes, elles, tardent à ressentir cette amélioration dans le coût de la vie dans leur portefeuille. Et on peut les aider parce que le gouvernement canadien a une situation fiscale et économique enviable. L'économie est vigoureuse, le taux de chômage est bas, l'inflation est sous contrôle depuis presque un an maintenant et les taux d'intérêt sont à la baisse. Et en plus, depuis presque 21 ou 22 mois, maintenant, les salaires augmentent plus rapidement que les prix. Malheureusement, M. Blanchet et M. Poilievre ont dit à leurs députés de voter contre notre congé de taxe pour les familles québécoises et autres familles canadiennes. Ils ont également voté à répétition à plusieurs reprises contre d'autres mesures qui aident les familles à faire face au coût de la vie. Premièrement, contre l'allocation canadienne pour enfants qui met plus d'argent dans les poches de 8 familles sur 10, les familles de la classe moyenne et à plus faible revenu. Deuxièmement, contre le régime canadien de soins dentaires, avec près de 3 millions de Canadiens inscrits, dont plus de 1 million de Québécois seulement. Et troisièmement, le programme d'alimentation scolaire qui va aider les familles du Canada et du Québec à envoyer leurs enfants le ventre plein à l'école le matin. Ces mesures sont un soulagement important pour les Canadiens et les Québécois de la classe moyenne et qui travaillent fort pour en faire partie. Merci.
So we'll start the question period with Mackenzie Gray from Global. We will have 25 minutes, so hopefully the question will be short and the answer will be short
On
as
va
well.
essayer.
Thank you.
Hi, Minister Freeland. After the meeting today with the opposition leaders, both Mr. Singh and Ms. May came out and said that Mr. Poilievre in the meeting was very partisan. Ms. May talking about the idea you brought up getting rid of the carbon tax. Just want to go back to your statement. You said people should not be negotiating against our interests. Are you saying that Mr. Poilievre is negotiating against Canada's interest right now?
I didn't mention any specific leader in my remarks, Mackenzie. We recognize it is the job of the opposition to oppose. That's how parliamentary democracy works. What I did say in that meeting is we are in a truly challenging time for our country. I know that Canada can successfully navigate this challenging time and that Canada can achieve a really positive outcome. But that's not going to happen by accident. Canada will achieve a good outcome for Canada and Canadians if we are smart, if we are strong, and if we are united. I believe that we can do that, but we're all going to have to work at it. And I do think it's important for all Canadians in a leadership position, from coast to coast to coast, for premiers, for mayors, for business leaders, for union leaders, for every single federal MP to recognize we're in this together. A good outcome for Canada is a good outcome for all Canadians. It's a good outcome for everyone who elected every MP in the House. And a bad outcome is bad for everybody. That was the message that we shared with premiers. That was the message that we shared with leaders of the opposition parties. And it is certainly the case that we need to be thoughtful about what we say. We need to be thoughtful about negotiating in public. And we need to be thoughtful as a country and as individuals not to negotiate against ourselves, not to do or say things that harm the national interest.
You are the chair of this cabinet committee on Canada-U.S. relations. You were very involved with NAFTA, but you were not at the meeting with Donald Trump. Why were you not there?
Well, that's a question first and foremost for the Prime Minister. But look, I think it was the right choice. The meeting was principally about the border. That is what was very clear from the conversation that the Prime Minister had with the President ahead of time, from the President's tweet. And Minister LeBlanc is the minister responsible for the border.
Alex Bengal, Toronto Star.
Thank you very much. Just on the, it's the beginning of December. We still haven't seen the public accounts or this report, the annual financial report that I understand shows the deficit and other figures like that. I've heard some concerns that this is showing basically a troubling lack of transparency around our fiscal picture right now. We still haven't seen the fiscal update. So I'm wondering, what is your response to those concerns that, MPs are voting on new spending and they don't even know the audited financial picture from the last fiscal year at this point?
Yeah, thank you for the question. The public accounts will be published this year. And when it comes to the fall economic statement, I don't have an announcement to make about that today. We are very keen to deliver a fall economic statement. The reality is, business of the House is being filibustered. That has real consequences in terms of the government's ability to do the work that we need to do for Canadians.
So are you saying, if I understand right, that the reason these haven't been released, the report's not the fiscal update, is because of the filibuster, or why have they not been released?
No, the second part of my answer was regarding the fall economic statement, which you asked about too.
Yes, but what about those reports? Why have they not been? They're always, or usually, as I understand it, by now they're both published. So why haven't they been this year?
They'll be published this year.
Hélène Buzetti, les coop de l'info.
Oui, excusez-moi, Madame la ministre, mais je veux insister sur la question de mon collègue. Pourquoi ne sont-ils pas publiés? Quel est le problème généralement? On les a à peu près à la fin octobre, début novembre. C'est presque 2 mois plus tard. Pourquoi? Vous expliquez pas pourquoi?
Ils seront publiés cette année selon les règles.
Et vous ne dites pas pourquoi vous ne les publiez pas, vous ne les avez pas déjà publiés. Est-ce que vous avez peur? Vous aviez promis, par exemple, de respecter un fiscal anchor de 40 milliards de dollars. Doit-on penser que c'est parce que vous ne respecterez pas cet objectif et donc que vous voulez faire connaître cette information le plus tardivement possible quand on va être tous en train de penser à Noël?
Non, absolument pas. Il n'y a pas un lien. Ils seront publiés cette année et c'est la responsabilité de... ce n'est pas la responsabilité de la ministère des Finances. Et on va avoir une annoncée... On a l'envie d'avoir une annoncée économique de l'automne. Et on travaille sur cela.
Pramit Ritter.
Hi. Wanted to ask you, there are a lot of spending pressures on the government at the moment. I mean, there is this GST tax break, then there'll be cash handout next year, then there could be a possible increase in defense funding, which will require potential tariffs. All these will kind of impact the government's revenues as well as expenditures in some way. Do you think that these actually can force the government to compromise or breach the fiscal anchors this year and the subsequent years?
We will provide clarity on that with the fall economic statement, which we are very keen and intent on delivering. As I said, there is a conservative filibuster of the House that does create challenges when it comes to moving forward with formal House business. And the only thing I'll add is Canada does have a strong fiscal position. We have the lowest debt and the lowest deficit in the G7.
In terms of the GST tax break, which goes out from your revenue basket, as well as in terms of the cash handout that goes out next year, most probably, how are you actually planning to fund these? I mean, where is the money coming from for these things?
Again, we'll present a full fiscal picture when we present the fall economic statement.
Noju, the Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Do you have a sense from credit rating agencies on whether Canada risks being downgraded if it does blow through the fiscal guardrails that it promised last year?
Again, that's a question for ratings agencies. We do take Canada's fiscal position seriously. Fiscal sustainability is really important to our government. Canada has had the fastest pace of fiscal consolidation in the G7, and we currently have the lowest debt to GDP ratio and the lowest deficit in the G7. Those are real strengths, as is the fact that Canada is on track to achieve a soft landing from the COVID recession and the global inflation that followed and the high interest rates that followed that.
The NDP aren't supporting the $250 rebates unless they're expanded to include people with disabilities, seniors. Do you plan on doing that?
We put forward two measures, and we are a minority in Parliament. That means we can only move forward with measures that receive support from other parties. The GST rebate has received support, and we are moving ahead with that. That will be available to Canadians. The other measure has not so far found support from other parties. That's the reality of our position in a minority.
So are you going to change it in response?
The measure that we put forward has not found support from other parties. We are in conversation, very energetically with opposition parties.
Jack Ill-Times.
Hi. The filibuster has been paused for an upcoming vote on supply. Is your government planning to pause the filibuster even more for a fall economic statement and public accounts?
We're not the ones who decide whether to pause the filibuster or not.
Okay. What would these proposed Trump tariffs do to your budget's bottom line?
there are so many hypotheticals embedded in that question. What I'll say is this. I think it's an important question, and it's an important question for Canada and Canadians. The reality is this is a challenging moment for our country. We can not only get through this, but find real opportunities for our country. But that won't happen by accident. We're going to have to work really hard. We're going to have to be really smart. We're going to have to be really strong. We're going to have to be really united. That is what we are working really, really hard to achieve. And the only thing I'll add is it is certainly true that Canada economically depends on the United States. It's also true that the United States economically depends on us. And that is important for everyone to remember. It is really important to bear in mind that Canada is the largest export market for the United States by far. We are larger than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined when it comes to being a market for US exports. And that gives us real strength.
Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne.
Bonjour, Mme Freeland. Vous êtes ministre des Finances. Combien pensez-vous, combien êtes-vous prête à investir pour régler les enjeux à la frontière?
Nous ne sommes pas ici pour faire des annonces concernant la frontière. Mais je veux dire que, premièrement, on doit être clair que la frontière aujourd'hui est sécure. On doit être clair aussi que c'est les Canadiens et Canadiennes qui ont le droit de décider qui peut entrer le Canada. Et évidemment, nous avons le droit et la responsabilité d'empêcher l'entrée des marchandises illégaux. Et c'est aussi le cas que nos voisins américains ont le droit de décider qui va entrer aux États-Unis et qui n'entrera pas. Et évidemment, ils ont aussi le droit, l'obligation de s'assurer que les marchandises illégaux n'entrent pas les États-Unis. Une frontière, c'est toujours une responsabilité partagée. C'est toujours réglé par le travail en commune. Et c'est ce que le Canada fait. C'est ce que le Canada a fait pendant des décennies. C'est ce qu'on fait aujourd'hui. Et c'est ce qu'on va continuer de faire. On discute maintenant avec la nouvelle administration américaine, la frontière, et on sera toujours prête de faire tout ce nécessaire pour s'assurer que notre frontière est sécure, surtout parce que c'est dans l'intérêt des Canadiens et Canadiennes.
La deuxième question, c'est un 2 pour 1. D'abord, l'énoncé économique d'automne, je suis sur le site du Conseil national de recherche du Canada. L'hiver commence le 21 décembre à 9h20. Envisagez-vous un énoncé économique d'hiver ou ce sera vraiment un énoncé économique d'automne? Et d'autre part, avez-vous été agacé de ne pas avoir été invité à Mar-a-Lago?
Concernant l'énoncé économique de l'automne, on a hâte de présenter un énoncé économique de l'automne. C'est un moment important pour le gouvernement, c'est un moment important pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Comme vous savez tous, le travail de notre gouvernement, le travail de Chambre des communes est filibustré maintenant et ça empêche le travail ordinaire du gouvernement. Mais on comprend la valeur, l'importance d'une énoncé économique de l'automne.
Mar-a-Lago?
J'ai déjà répondu, mais je juste dirais que pas du tout. C'était une conversation ciblée sur la frontière et ça fait du sens d'avoir le ministre responsable pour la frontière là.
Stephanie Levitz, Globe and Mail.
Just on the fall economic statement, for many years, the previous government did not introduce it in the House of Commons. There's no requirement that it be introduced in the House of Commons. So are you considering alternate locations, and if not, why not?
It's a very good question. Usual practice for our government is to introduce the fall economic statement in the House of Commons. That's where the work of Parliament is done. That's where the government appropriately makes its major announcements, and that's where it should be done. As you all know, the work of government, the work of Parliament, has been filibustered for many weeks now, and that is something that I think is a question that should be asked of the Conservatives. You know, why are they blocking the work of our Parliament at a time when Canadians deserve a Parliament that's working?
I have a different follow-up question, but you could also use statements from ministers for the fall economic statement as an example. But my follow-up is back to the Team Canada message. Conservative MP Jamil Javani is very good friends with incoming Vice President J.D. Vance. Have you phoned Jamil Javani? Do you intend to try and speak to him and ask him either for counsel on how to manage, ask him to be a conduit, anything like that?
I do think that now is a moment that really we should all be playing for Team Canada, and all of us should be putting country before party. And for me, the great example of that was the late Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. He was a very important counselor personally to me, to the Prime Minister, and really helped steer our country through a challenging time. I really appreciated it. And he used his personal network of contacts. In the meeting with the opposition leaders today, we did talk about that experience and how it reflected well on all Canadians. And I think it was the right thing to do today, to have a meeting of the leaders of the main parties in Parliament and to give people an opportunity to understand a little bit what the government's approach is, what the government has been learning. And it was indeed an opportunity for the Prime Minister first and foremost, but also for me, to say to the opposition leaders, let's all play for Team Canada. We saw how effective Prime Minister Mulroney could be using his contacts, and the government will always be really enthusiastic to work together with everyone in a leadership position in our country to get the best possible result for Canadians.
Mina, CTV?
I understand that you're saying there's a conservative filibuster going on right now, and there's a likelihood, like with the likelihood that it would continue. What are you like? How are you hoping to change that? Like, I understand you're all saying you're not the one to decide whether to stop it or not, but what would that mean for the fall economic statement? Like,
very good question, and I am not here today to make any specific announcements about the fall economic statement. But I do want to assure everyone that we believe there should be a fall economic statement, and we are working hard to find a way to deliver a fall economic statement because we think that is important for Canada and Canadians. And I will say that this is a moment, the best way to deliver a fall economic statement is to stand up in the House of Commons and deliver it. That is the best for all Canadians and for Canadian MPs. And people should be asking the Conservatives what purpose is being served by making this so challenging.
but I mean, what are you doing about this filibuster, like as someone with the responsibility of delivering the fall economic statement? What are you,
Like, how are you handling and trying to get past this filibuster? What are you doing about it?
Yeah, no, I understand the question, and I just want to assure you we're working on it. We believe there should be a fall economic statement, and we are working on ways to deliver one.
Thank you. C'est ce qui conclut cette conférence de presse. Je vous souhaite une bonne soirée.
Merci à vous.
Merci tout le monde.